So generally API means application programming interface. Okay, nowadays it is very important to understand any software development includes APIs. Okay, so as a automation test engineer, we have to understand how APIs will work. Okay, and what are the protocols it supports, and how the client server communication will be there, and what we can validate. Okay, okay. Now here, if I open any application, let's say, so here I have client, okay, and I have server here. Okay, so it may be any client server. Okay, this one is the client. Okay, this one is server. How it will communicate? What type of protocol it will use? Okay, HTTP protocol. Okay, so HTTP protocol, what it will do? It will establish the connection and it will send request to the server. Okay, let's say request, send request. Okay. So client, what it will do? It will send the request to the whom it will send request? Server. Okay. Once we send request to the server, what it will do? What it will do? It will authenticate and it will return the response. Authenticate, then it will return the response. Okay. It will return the response. Send request. Here response. Okay. So this is the way it will establish the connection and it will communicate with the client and server. Okay. So what kind of request it is? Okay. So generally we have two types of APIs. Okay, two types of APIs. Okay. So there are 4 5 types of APIs, but majorly we will focus on REST API and SOAP API. Okay. REST means it is representational state. Okay. Representational state transfer APIs. Okay. So generally REST it will support methods like get, post, patch, put, delete. Okay. So these are the supported methods for REST API. Okay. So most of the time REST API, the data it will be what type of data? It will be either JSON or XML. Okay. So most of the time it will be JSON or XML. Okay. What about SOAP API? This we can say simple object access protocol. Okay. So this one having most of the time XML data. Okay. XML data. Okay. And even the structure of the XML also complicated. So here this will be very straightforward and simple format, and SOAP will be complex format. Okay. Clear? So this is the way communication will be happening with two client and server, and it will send the client will send the request and server will validate and give the response back. Once client is received the response, they can validate what are the need of this response APIs. Okay. So how it will send the request means, so by using HTTP protocol, okay, by using HTTP protocol, and here it will establish the connection based on the username, URL and all. Okay, we'll see with examples. Okay, so this is the way API it will work. Okay, let's jump into our now. Okay. So here now, how we can, what type of validations we can do, what, right? So here each and everything. So if you use REST API, okay, we can establish the connection. We can send the request in form of JSON, and it will return the response also in a form of JSON. Okay, in form of JSON. Here we can validate status codes, response messages, response time, etc. Okay, response messages, response, etc. Okay. Okay, now, so how this will be useful? Okay, for example, we can take any one website. Okay, let's take any one example. Okay, this automation exercise test cases example. If you see here API testing, okay, so here assume that each one is a one test case. Okay, we have 14 test cases. Okay, so here this is the URL, okay, and supported method get, and status code is 200, and it will return all the product list. Okay, clear? Now, how we can, so major components is required during the API testing is URL. URL means, what is the URL? For URL testing, what we need?
Website link.
Yes, it is URL means website link. This we can say host name or website host, etc. Okay, it may be host name, it may be website URL, it may be IP address, right? IP address also it is a so generally host name, website URL based on the IP address only. Okay, so numbers cannot be easy to understand, remember it. That is the reason we are having URL. Okay, so here host name. Okay, there is a major thing is API endpoint. Okay, endpoint. Okay, so endpoint is the navigating to some location. For example, if I take this URL itself, so here what is the URL? So automationexercise.com. Okay, automation exercise is the .com, and it is supporting HTTPS protocol. Okay, now this we can say URL. Okay, this we can say URL. Okay, example URL, something like this. Okay, now whatever we have API list, this we can say endpoint. Okay, so generally this is the endpoint. So even sometimes if I, so few endpoints are visible, public means that we can able to see. Where we can see the endpoints means how we are doing the Selenium automation? By inspecting and looking at the locators, right? So inspect. So in the elements, we can see the locators, right? Correct? Is it correct? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. In the same way, for APIs, if you see the network tab here, this we can say console developer tools, right? Elements is for UI automation. If you see the network tab, if I refresh this browser, here we can see the multiple API calls is happening. Okay. Here you can see there are multiple API calls is hitting. Okay. See, as I said, right, this is the URL, API list is the endpoint, and it is supported get method, and status code is 200. Okay. And response, if you see, some HTML format. Okay. So here we need to understand one thing. There is a difference between APIs and other. Okay. So this one is some CSS is rendering. Okay. These are, see, whatever here we are seeing, all these are not APIs. Okay. These all are not APIs. If you click something, here it is not to showing, but generally we can see endpoints here. Okay. So this is the endpoint. Okay. So this is the method, endpoint URL, and etc. Okay. If it is a payload, we have this we can provide and response. Okay. So we'll see going forward. But here, this is for access web application, right? So they have given some dedicated data. Okay. So here you can see, right, API product list. Okay, products list. This endpoint is the get method. What it will do, if you hit this endpoint, it will return some response. So that response seems like this. Which format it is?
JSON.
JSON format, right? So this JSON format we can validate based on the key and values structures. Okay, let's see. Okay, this is the URL. Now endpoint means if I take this entire URL, products and endpoints, let's store into product list endpoint. Okay, so can we say enter this one is the endpoint, or only we can say this is the endpoint? This is the URL. Okay, this is the endpoint, product list endpoint. Okay, API. So now here, if you guys understand, each API have the API, correct? See API. So this API we can say path parameter. Okay, path parameter. Path param. What is the path param? API. Okay, and endpoint is product list. Okay, so this is the way we need to understand what is the URL, what is the path parameter, and what is the product uh, endpoint. Okay, now sometimes if you have any such, is there any such? If you have any search or filter options, we can see query parameters. Okay, maybe we'll see later. Okay, so here, if you guys understand, get, post, get, put, post. There are whatever the methods we have discussed here, right? Get, post, patch, put, delete. All these methods will be supported for doing manual testing or automation testing. Okay. We can see how we can automate these test cases. One or two test cases, maybe one test case for each method. And what is our framework structure we need to understand. The same way, how we can manually test these endpoints. Okay. First, we can see the manual testing. Then we'll move for automation. So for manual testing, where we can test these endpoints? By using postman tool. Okay. By using postman tool, we can validate APIs manually. And using request module in Python, we can do the automation testing. Clear? So as part of our curriculum, very beginning we discussed about, we are going to discuss about API testing as well. Correct. Okay. Now let's create a new here. So, okay. Now there is a mechanism. We can copy this one. Okay. Let's say, so this is the URL along with the endpoint. Okay. Copy. So here in the postman, guys, we can create the collections. We can collections in a sense. Let's second. Sorry. So path parameter, okay, API endpoints. Now in postman, we can create the collections. We can create the collections. So what is a collection means? It's a collections means collection of API endpoints. Okay. So generally it is a folder and it contains multiple API endpoints. Multiple API endpoints. Okay. Okay. For doing testing, what we need? We need URL, we need path param, we need API endpoint. Now method, supported method. Okay. Supported method. So what could be the methods we have? Either get, post, patch, put, and delete. Okay. We can see when we can use get, when we can use post, when we can use patch, put, delete. Okay. So sometimes depends on the method, it requires authentication. Okay, authentication. Okay. So there are multiple types of authentications we have. One is barrier token, AWT token, basic auth, OAuth, okay, etc. So these are the authentication mechanisms we need to understand. Okay. So now you know URL, you know the host URL, and you know path parameter, you know API endpoint, you know which method we need to use, and authentication, if it is required, how we have to use, we'll see. Okay. So these are the components we need to perform any API endpoint. Okay. And few endpoints are visible, which we can see in the developer tools in the network section, and few it cannot be visible. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Now, so this is the URL to test. And in Postman, guys, how we can do the manual testing? Let's say it is a URL I have shared. And if I, so here, along with URL, we need to provide path parameter API endpoint as well. Okay. If I click this one, it will give the response. Okay. So while after hitting the endpoint, what we need to check means the major thing is that status code. Okay. So 200 means standard response for successful HTTP request. Okay. So generally, whenever we use get method, it will retrieve the information from the endpoint. Okay. Get method, it will retrieve the information from the endpoint. Okay. Once it is successful, we can get 200. Okay, status code. Okay, status code. Clear? So once we get 200 as a status code, that means it is successful. We can see the 200. Okay. So if I hit the 10 point, we can see the okay 200 success code. And in the response body, we can see what is the data we have. All the products list. Okay, you can see almost 48 products is there. So what type of data it is? What type of data? JSON, right? It is JSON.
Yes,
Okay.
Madhu.
It is a JSON response. Okay. If we see here headers, so generally no need to provide few headers. Okay, these are the inbuilt headers. We will get it like connection, accept, user agent, host. Okay, so one of the key point is headers. Okay, headers. Okay, headers. Headers. What is the use of headers means? Using if we want pass the authentication info, we can provide in headers. Okay, we can provide in headers. Clear? So headers section we can use for provide the authentication part. Okay, so get method, this is not required any authentication, that is the reason no need to provide. Okay, not only authentication, here application type also we can specify. Okay, you can specify. Okay, now after this we can say request headers. Okay, once we have request and we send to the client, sorry, from client to server we send the request, what it will return? Response, right? So this is the response. Okay, this is the response body. Okay, okay, this is the response. The response can contain info from the request server. Okay, from the server we can get the response, right? Okay. So it is a form of JSON. Okay, let's see. So this endpoint we got some response. What we can validate? Can we validate status code, response code, right? So if it is success, it should be 200. Okay, and there must be some schema. Okay, products is the key, and the list of values should be there. Okay, again the list of values, it is having a key value pair. Okay, means dictionary. So we can get all the usernames and price. Okay, so this is the task for you guys. Okay, I will give end of the day on this task. Okay. Now to use get method, we can use endpoint. It is not required any authentication. That is the reason we are not providing any authorization section. Okay. Now we can go for another endpoint. So in Postman, guys, just we can simply use like this. Okay. If you go to post method, okay. So here there is a post method. Okay, we can go for valid one post search. If I log in with Payable, which is required. Okay, first we'll go for user creation. Okay, so here you can see this is the endpoint. Create account is the endpoint, and the method is post. And here you can see the request parameters. Okay, request parameters are required to create the entity in the resource. Entity in the resource. For example, this user already we have this data. We have this data. Let's copy into some variable. Let's copy. Let's start this one. Okay. Create account.